subject of gophers and critters, I'm going to go in. My first presentation is going to be basically on materials for gophers and from the regulatory side. I can't do any recommendations what to use, but I can tell you what we can do to make sure we use them properly. The three that we want to cover first is our restricted materials, such as strychnine, zinc phosphide, aluminum phosphide, phostoxin. Excuse my ignorance, but when we're dealing with alfalfa, you guys give me a little feedback real quick. I know the gentleman was talking about doing phostoxin work and crews like that. Do you guys do bait broadcast on alfalfa using difascinone or any of those kind of materials? Is that a feasible method? Okay. So I don't want to talk about something you guys are not going to do. So anyways, the first ones we're going to talk about, strychnine, zinc phosphide, aluminum phosphide, those are California restricted materials. Those need to be on your restricted material permit prior to use. So if you use any of those materials or plan on using any of those materials, and those aren't available on that sheet. We don't sell the strychnine or the phosphide. We do sell the zinc phosphide, I'm sorry. We don't sell the strychnine or the aluminum phosphide. Those are available commercially. They are restricted materials. They are required notice of intent prior to use. So you have to give us a 24-hour notice of intent prior to use when using any of those three materials. They do need certified applicators supervising their use. So make sure you have somebody that is in charge of with a private applicator certificate, qualified applicator license, or qualified applicator certificate with the proper categories. And then they obviously need to be reported every month on a monthly summary. The other material that's very popular is difascinone. Difascinone is federally restricted. So you don't have to have it on your permit, but you do still have to have a certified applicator involved in the application. So you have to have a private applicator certificate, QAL or a QAC available, and then also we report those materials at the end of each month. Labels. You must have labels available at the site when making your applications. When you guys are talking about some new products that are coming out, either under a 24C or a Section 18 labeling, I want to make sure everyone understands that those new labelings need to be available at the site with the product. And sometimes those may require being printed out separately. They're not always included with the labels. They're a separate label. They're considered part of the label, and it should be available when you guys make applications. So keep that in mind if you get some new products that come down the line that have either a 24C or SLN or a Section 18. Make sure those are in there. Section 18 materials, if you hear something's coming out under Section 18, those are considered restricted materials and they need to be added to your permit prior to use. And we will give you a copy of that label when you come in. We'll add that on. Okay, 24-hour notice of intent. I think everybody's familiar with that. Excuse me, on the California restricted materials, the strychnine, zinc phosphide, aluminum phosphide, those have to be turned in. They can be done through either fax or online if you're in Agrin or one of those CalAg, CalAg, which is our system. You can submit those electronically if you like. So notice of intents need to be filled out prior to use. Let's see here. All right, let's skip that. Certified applicator responsible for supervision shall be aware of conditions at the site of application and be available to direct and control the manner in which applications are made by non-certified applicators. So if you have folks in the field that do your applications for you and they have their own PAC cards or QAL or QAC, they don't have to have someone else available watching them. They are considered certified applicators. You don't have to have someone else watching over them doing their jobs. Only people that are not certified, meaning your uncertified, unlicensed applicators, those guys need to have a certified applicator in contact, directing them what they need to do in case they have questions. And that can be done through either cell phone, two-way radio, as long as they're in some kind of contact. They don't necessarily have to be on site. Let's see here. Are there any permit conditions for the use of strychnine, zinc phosphide, treated grain, aluminum phosphide for rodent control? No, there are no permit conditions. Other than labeling, your labeling is your guide on those materials. All right. One of the topics I want to cover real quick, aluminum phosphide or fumatoxin, phostoxin that's used for gopher control or squirrel control. That is a fumigant. Fumigants kind of have their own pile of responsibilities. Not only do they need the certified applicator, they also require what's called a fumigant management plan. This is not new, but it's something that we've been trying to enforce more and more over the last couple of years. You need to have a plan in place if you have people that apply fumigants so they know what to do, who to call, where to go, all that kind of information. If you need any instructions through how to develop an FMP or fumigant management plan, our office will be more than happy to help you. The other thing is you can often get, especially if you go through like fumatoxin or one of those to Gesh, they often have an FMP template that you can start out with. Has basically all the information you need, just fill in the blanks. Who the certified applicators are, where our emergency medical information is, where are we going to do all these fumigation applications. Once you set that up, you don't need to change it unless something changes. You don't have to have a new FMP for every application. You just have to have one filled out for your areas of application. And then unless something changes, like a certified applicator changes or your rates change or something like that, you don't change it. It's good as is, but it has to be developed, it has to be written down, and it has to be available in case we need to ask for it. It doesn't have to be in the field, but your applicator should be aware of it. They should know where it is if they need to reference it. And then if we're doing an inspection and we have any questions, it'll be something we're going to ask for. So, phostoxin, you guys talk about gophers being a real serious problem. And I know they're a problem because we deal with gophers a lot, deal with squirrels a lot, especially recently. This dry temperatures seem to increase the populations of squirrels tremendously. So if you have squirrel problems that are, they're in your berms and your irrigation canal banks, that kind of thing, if you need you're going to use phostoxin to treat them, make sure you have an FMP developed. And like I say, our office is more than happy. We can help you out with those. If you go to your dealer or suppliers, they should have some information where you can get started on that kind of stuff. Agrian, I know for sure, has a template already designed for this. You can go into them, go into your Agrian account, and set up and see about how to set up an FMP through them. Really, really helpful information. Zinc phosphide, popular product. It is restricted material. 2% treated grain for ground squirrels, voles, in alfalfa, sugar beets, rangelands, orchards, and then it also treats for Norway rats and roof rats in uncultivated areas. Strychnine, anybody still use strychnine? Not as popular as it used to be. It's harder to find too. I went and looked at, tried to get a hold of strychnine just to see what availability is out there, and it's not very readily available as it used to be. It's still out there, but it's fairly rare. Aluminum phosphide has pretty much taken its place along with the zinc phosphide. Both those products work really well. Zinc phosphide, once again, for voles, ground squirrels, Norway rats. The product is very alfalfa, specifically for voles, 6 to 10 pounds per acre. Sugar beets, 5 pounds, orchard and vineyards, 6 to 10 pounds per acre. So, zinc phosphide, treated grain. This is the time of year to use it for sure. Each person doing pest control, be sure you're using it in a safe and effective manner. Use only suitable methods, proper climate conditions. Obviously, you don't want to use aluminum phosphide if it's going to rain. That would be a good idea. Watch make sure you're not in there doing applications right before irrigation where you could cause some issues. And always use precaution when using any of these materials, especially the fumigants. Aluminum phosphide requires dry gloves made of cotton. This is the phos toxin. Anywhere that you may, if there's any likely contact, aerate after use. Zinc phosphide requires a long sleeve shirt, long pants, socks, shoes, gloves, and may require a respirator depending on the label. And strychnine, long sleeve shirt, long sleeve adequate protective clothing, rubber gloves, etc., which we don't use very often. Okay. Just a reminder, if you have people who make applications for you as your employees, your responsibility is to supply them with personal protective equipment. They won't have to bring their own. It's your obligation to give them that equipment. Shall be provided for and daily inspected and cleaned, repair or replace any worn, damaged, or heavily contaminated PPE. So if you use cloth coveralls, make sure they're clean. Also need to provide protective gloves as required by the label, whether that's a cotton glove or a rubber glove, depending on the material you're using. Respiratory protection. This is one that's really causing issues right at the moment, especially with aluminum phosphide, phos toxin. The phos toxin manual label currently requires you to monitor and use a respirator. And it's not just your regular dust mist respirator, it's an actual respirator with an organic vapor cartridge. We know, you know, I know, anyone with any common sense knows, if you're applying phos toxin outside, is there any chance of any serious levels of phosphine coming up? No, we know that. But I am held and you are held by the label. Label requires a monitor and a respirator at this current time. If you feel that is too much or you don't think there could be a better way to do it, I would seriously talk to your representatives or labelers and ask them, or DPR. We've already put our foot on DPR. They want to hear it from you. I think there should be some kind of change to that. Outdoor applications with aluminum phosphide, if used properly with the proper PPE, is a very low chance of contamination. But the labels for all the materials, we looked at all of them, they all require, even for outdoor use, respirator and a monitor, which means you have to have one of those usually a little electronic monitor. You can either pin it on, some keep it on your shirt, some people keep it on a belt. You have to maintain that there's nothing there. If you don't do it, it requires an SCBA. And I really don't think anybody wants to haul around an SCBA. They'll try to treat gopher or squirrel holes with phos toxin. So it's unfortunate that the label's written that way, but as it is right now, aluminum phosphide, phos toxin materials all require a respirator and to be monitoring the area where you're applying. Okay? So if you have one of our inspectors come out and push that issue, now you know why. Because it is on the label. Phos toxin does require coveralls, dry cotton gloves, and make sure they stay dry. You can use a leather glove, but you got to make sure they stay dry. And then they do require a full face gas mask, NIOSH approved. Unless the concentration exceeds a certain level, then you have to go SCBA, but I don't think we'll ever have that problem with outdoor applications. A lot of the problems I think that came up with phos toxin is those materials were developed primarily for fumigation inside, treatment facilities like treating almonds, walnuts, that kind of thing. So a lot of the levels of acceptable levels and the PPE were developed for inside exposure. Outside exposure hasn't been addressed properly in the label, in my opinion. This is personally my opinion, not the department's. This is my opinion that there needs to be an outdoor add-on to that, but it hasn't happened as of yet. Okay. And these are all pictures of the bait, which you can't really see. Apologize for that. We'll make sure we get that next time. And now the lights are going out.
It's not a hint, really.
I know, somebody's trying to tell me something. One of the things on if you use the difascinone for squirrels, you set up the T bait stations, PVC pipe. If you do set that up, please make sure you use the right material in the stations, whether you're using scatter bait or if you're doing the station bait. They are color coded for a reason. One is usually purple. Which one's a scatter?
The scatter is blue in Fresno County.
Yeah, okay. Fresno County, the scatter bait is colored blue, and the bait station is purple. The blade station is purple. That's the stuff we make and sell through our office. Please make sure you know the difference and your applicators know the difference. The scatter bait should be scattered, not piled up. There shouldn't be little piles of bait all over the field. That does nobody any good. They won't go to it the way you would think they would. The trap bait or the PVC bait, that has to make sure you use the proper stuff. Yes, sir.
Bill, so the blue stuff is not good to put in those PVC pipes then?
Is that the scatter?
Yeah, and not the Fresno County stuff. So I've been told that the other few counties that make their bait, their colors are different sometimes. So make sure you read the label. The label, the .01, that will be your scatter, and the .005 will be in the bait station. So I can't say for 100% blue, yes, purple, no. But for Fresno County stuff, blue is scatter only, and purple is for the plastic tubes only.
Yeah, so the .005?
Yeah.
0.005% is for the stations. The .1
Yeah.
is the scatter bait. This is David Sear. He's with our office also. He worked in the cricket counter.
Made the poison.
Yeah, and he made the stuff too. And he survived.
And when you say scatter, you just kind of...
Yeah, just we tell people, imagine there's a chessboard and you're trying to get 1 grain per every square of the chessboard. Because their natural feeding instinct is to run around and get stuff. And sometimes when it's piled, something's weird, they won't do it. And then secondary predators and stuff we worry about, we don't want fish and game in any of your fields for any reason, so.
Yeah, so you can use you've seen those little handheld whirlybirds that you use to spray the fertilizer with and you're on your lawn. You can use one of those. You put the bait in it and scatter it using one of those. But you want to make sure that it's evenly dispersed. For some reason, like they were saying, they have this natural instinct to go find and go get it and then take it back with them. If you put it in a big pile, what they do is they chipmunk it away, for lack of a better term. They'll put it in their cheeks and they'll haul it back to their den, and then they store it. It's like, oh, I found a treasure, and they take it back. Whereas when they're scattering it, they will actually consume it as they find it. So you want them to consume it because it takes repeat feedings to make sure this stuff works properly. So that's why the stuff that's in the bait stations is in a lower concentration, because they're going to come back to that bait station repeatedly, get a little bit, a little bit, a little bit. Whereas the stuff that you scatter, if they don't eat it, they just pull it all up and put it back in the den and leave it for later. They won't consume it. It could go bad. It gets wet, whatever. It doesn't work anymore. Very important to make sure you use the right method with the proper concentration. But please don't pile it. We've had incidences where non-target critters find these piles, whether it's dog, cat, raccoon, whatever. They find these piles, they consume it, they get sick, and then we get problems. So that's what we don't want. Fish and game, obviously, we're the county level. I'm with Fresno County. If I didn't say that before, Dave's with Fresno County. We're the county level. When you deal fish and game, you jump to the state. The state's not as friendly as we are. Don't tell them I said that, but that's just kind of a fact of life.
What's that? Okay, so Bill, a question real quick.
Yeah.
So for the scatter bait, that's not labeled for rabbits, but the bait station, the purple stuff, the .005, it is actually for cottontails and jackrabbits. It has to be a self-closed feeding dispenser. So you can use it for those, just make sure you're using the right one. Again, like I said, fish and game, if they catch it, you're in big
Don't
trouble.
be eating any rabbits in the general vicinity.
Yeah, I would stay away from shooting rabbits.
Yeah, we want to watch out that these are, these baits are used effectively in the right manner, because if they're not, then you end up having secondary consumption by coyotes, whatever, dogs, cats. Then you get into trouble because then the dogs, cats, coyotes die, somebody reports it, and then we have to follow up on it and have problems.
And then if your dog does get into the poison, they take him to the vet and they can give him a vitamin K shot that's supposed to be the antidote, so in case.
There is a remedy for it, but let's try not to get to that point in the first place. Bait stations, if you do use bait stations, make sure they're properly maintained. We've got some pictures of where guys put out these really nice bait stations, spend the money on them, and then they end up being run over by tractors or destroyed by whatever because nobody went out and ever maintained them. You have to make sure the bait stays fresh. If you don't service the bait periodically, it turns to mold and they won't touch it. So you have to make sure these bait stations are secure, properly set up, and maintained. That will go a long way to making sure your program is effective. There's no point in spending all the money on time, effort, bait, and materials just to let it go bad in the field, So make sure these things are maintained properly, make sure they're not broken, falling over, run over, whatever. Some people target practice them, whatever. Make sure you check up on them, have somebody checking these on a regular basis. And cleaning them out periodically. One heads up on it. If you get the 3 or 4 inch pipe and you put a cap on the very top, so you imagine it's a T, inverted T, you put a cap on top, the black widows love hanging out in that tube. When I was at Fresno State, we used to go out and service these things, and you pop the tube and every single one on that black widow at the top of it. Just something to keep in mind. I wish I could show you this picture a little bit better, but basically it's a big tub of the gopher pickers. Don't do that. Make sure they're properly secured, make sure they're in the right spot, using the right product. It's kind of funny, you put out the scatter bait and it doesn't look like it's there. The squirrels will find it, believe me. They will find it. We color it so that you know it's there and we know what type you're using. But when you scatter it out and the blue color spread out around, you don't always see it. They will find it.
So when you go to the county to get bait, will they only sell you the type of bait for the type of year? For example, right now we go in, they automatically sell you the purple stuff. Could you have the option to buy some scatters, blue stuff?
Oh no, we sell any of the material all year round. We just advise you, especially like the zinc phosphide, the stuff that gets wet and then the phosphine gas comes off. We just advise you, this is a good time to use this is a good time. Because we have a lot of guys in the springtime, they'll just load up on cartridges and then hold them maybe for a year or so and then use them then, so.
Yeah, we also sell the smoke bombs for earlier in the year, and you'll find this when if you come into our office, and if you want any information, please feel free to give us a call. I think it's on the back of the sheets. It talks about when to apply. It has a little bit of information on when the best time to apply is. So you don't want to go out with grain bait in January because there's too much green feed out there for squirrels to get to. So you don't want to use the grain too early in the season, you're just wasting your money. Wait until we start getting into the drier part of the season. You go out and pre-bait with the clean oats. We sell the clean oats too. And anybody else that does, use the clean oats to get them transitioned from green material to the dry material to the oat material. And then you start putting out the bait material. So you kind of tease them into it, and then they start using that, consuming that material, and then that takes care of business. So there's a bit of a process. It's not just walk out, scatter bait, you're done. You got to understand your target a little bit and understand that there's a process to how they feed and what they feed. So especially with squirrels. The gophers, I think, are a little more straightforward. You can go straight down into the gopher holes with the proper bait and you take care of them right away. But they do feed on green material in the spring. If you ever seen them come out of the hole, they grab a bunch of grass and they pull it back down. It's probably because they're in breeding mode. But they're a little more straightforward. You can feed them direct with the proper bait. Make sure you're treating active when dealing with squirrels. Make sure you're treating with active burrows. Don't waste your time on burrows that there are no squirrels in anymore. You know, they do move on, they move around. So if you don't see, you see spider webs over the top of the burrow holes, move on. Fill it in and move on. It's not worth your time. Make sure they're active. Gopher holes. I'm sure you all know what gopher holes kind of have that crescent shape to them. So that tells you where they are and which direction they're going to. You can use the probe to fill in the strychnine bait or the zinc phosphide bait. Puncture into the ground, fill in the bait using either a funnel with a long-handled spoon, or if you have proper, sometimes they have I've seen where they have these machines that will actually put out a certain amount of bait. There's all kinds of methods and manners to do it, but baiting them is probably the best way to get them. You can fumigate them also. Make sure you plug the holes if you're dealing with gophers. Make sure after you've treated the tunnels, knock down the mounds so you know that you've treated that area. So you don't come back and retreat. Make sure once you've treated an area, kick down the mounds. If the mounds reappear, you know you still have an active burrow. Don't pile strychnine bait. If you do still use strychnine bait, do not pile it. We had, unfortunately, one of our staff actually had a horse who died from consuming strychnine bait because someone put it in the improper container, left it on the fence post, the horse came up, fed out of the container, and killed the horse. Bad news. So be very, very careful with these baits. They are dangerous. Fumatoxin, it is a restricted material, requires a permit. I've had people question, hey, what do I do with those aluminum cans? I got all this toxin bait, and now I've used it all, now I've got these aluminum things. What can I do? You can recycle them. Clean them out, you triple rinse them, make sure they're empty for get as much out of them, make sure all the pellets are done. But you can rinse them out, triple rinse them. They're not considered hazardous waste anymore. You can take them to the recycler. Now, I would recommend trying to peel off the label. Because they may not like it if you bring in the label. But if you take off the plastic label or soak it in water a little bit, rub that label off, you can recycle those containers. They are aluminum, and they're good aluminum. You get good money for those. So I'm surprised they don't charge CRV on them, but you can get those recycled. Yes, what do you do with the rinse water you get out of those cans? The rinse water is going to be very, very low. You could have it if you've got an area where you could disperse it. I wouldn't put it down the drain. I would make sure you disperse it on an area that is not going to contaminate anything else. The best thing to do would be in a field or in an area where it's ag related.
In regards to gophers, what do they call it? There's a catchy name with that bomb or inject some gas and then ignite it with boom.
The Rodex.
Rodex, or Rodenators, and that.
Rodenator, yeah. Are those effective on gophers?
Yeah. I've never used one, but I've heard they can be. They're mostly for squirrels.
Can you use those in an urban environment?
I wouldn't recommend it.
When I was in the warehouse, we actually had a grower come in, and he was up in the foothills, and every time he used one, his neighbors called the sheriff's department on him to complain about the noise. And he was up in the foothills, and he was every time, so he just said, I'm not doing it anymore.
I heard a story, I don't know if it's true, but they did burrow up under the house and they didn't know. So when they committed, destroyed the house.
Rodenators are a really fun tool. I've seen people that really enjoy using them, but I would make sure you're definitely in an ag situation and away from any homes or houses or buildings that you don't want to go in. They're not considered, they're pest control, but we don't regulate them. But you do need to be experienced and take your time when you're using them, because I've had all kinds of stories of where people have set fields on fire, because you're basically injecting propane into a ground and lighting it. That's what causes the concussion. The concussion usually destroys the animal's, brain or whatever the actual. And then it also sucks all the oxygen out of the hole, so they can suffocate if you don't get them with a concussion. So they're an interesting way of rodent control, but I would be very careful using them. Like I say, there is always a chance of fire. And we've got a really neat picture where somebody is rotating in one spot, and you can see the flame coming right back up the person's backside. So be very careful with those things. I've heard people love to use them because they're fun. When you're using the phos toxin, make sure that you put it down inside the hole. Do not add water. There's plenty of moisture in the soil to activate phos toxin on its own. In case you don't know, when you put phos toxin in the hole, it reacts with moisture, creates phosphine gas. Phosphine gas then kills whatever's in the holes. Do not add water to it because you can cause a flash, which can cause a fire. So be very careful. There's plenty of moisture in the soil. Cover it up, put the pellets in the hole, cover it up with newspaper or something that'll cover the hole, and then brush it over with dirt to seal it. That way the phosphine stays inside the tunnels. It doesn't escape out the hole. So it works very well when used properly.
So we're in there, we make our hole, drop the tablet in, you don't advise putting some water on top of it?
No. There's plenty of moisture in the soil. It will react.
And the reason why you don't want the water is for what now?
Aluminum phosphide reacts with water, and if you put too much water with it, it will actually react and flash. It will catch a small flame. And if that flame is in the wrong place, then you catch dry grass or something on fire by accident.
Also, I was told that when gophers, they feel that rush of air pressure, their first instinct is to wall themselves off. So if you have a big system, they'll wall themselves off. But if the phosphine gas kind of slowly drifts in, they don't notice it, and that's what's more effective for the gophers. Now the ground squirrels, they're not that fast, but still don't put water.
The gophers will react to it. They won't, that's why whenever you knock over a hole or you dig out a hole, and I don't know if anybody's ever tried catching them with traps. If you want to exercise the futility, you can go ahead and do that. I had to do, I had a busy job when I was a student at Fresno State. I think my boss hated me. He would make me go out and trap gophers. It was fun, but it was really boring. But the second you put those traps down, you put one trap in each direction of the hole, and then you cover it back up. If you didn't catch them in the trap, you'll come back and you'll see it's all mounted back up again. So they're constantly fixing their burrows. They're always working. So that's what they do to live, is they dig and eat. Make sure you fill up the holes. Do not add water, as I said. FMP, fumigate management plan for aluminum phosphide. You do not need it for the zinc phosphide or the diphacinone. So don't get that confused. The diphacinone, which is the treated grain, the zinc phosphide, which is treated grain, you do not need a fumigate management plan. Only the aluminum phosphide with the that you put in the burrows to fumigate the holes. And like I say, if you go to Dagesh, which is the maker of phos toxin, or any of the websites for any of the manufacturers of these materials, they usually have some kind of template that you can get started to get that taken care of for you. Let me go through that real quick. Okay, make sure your employees are trained prior to use. Make sure you have their written training programs available. Emergency medical care, make sure that's planned for ahead of time. Medical posting, you still have to have medical posting available, so even if you have a guy running around in a quad doing all the aluminum phosphide for you, make sure he's got medical posting on that quad, saying where he goes or someone will take him in case there's an emergency. That's got to be a name, address, and phone number of a medical emergency in the area or where you want them to go. If you work in Dos Palos, but you have a ranch in Coalinga, can't really not doing them any good if you've got Dos Palos information on your Coalinga ranch. So anywhere your employees may work, if they work at more than one location, make sure you have medical availability for everywhere they work. Does that make sense? Doesn't have to be somebody you're contracted with. Sometimes I get people think, well, I don't have anybody I'm contracted with to do medical care in Coalinga. Don't have to. Just it has to be somewhere someone could take them in case of an emergency. So if they have an emergency hospital or a clinic or something, whether it's in Fireball, Mendota, Coalinga, Fresno, wherever they're working, just have some place that someone can take them for emergency care. That's the important part. Okay, make sure your materials are locked up when not being used. Don't leave them by the roadside, by the wellhead, where people can walk away with them. Don't make sure all these materials aren't kept inside the cab with any other food products, and prevent spillage and all that kind of safety stuff. Any questions or thoughts? Anything anybody wants to address? Yes.
Is there something we can do about tree squirrels?
Tree squirrels? No. Yeah. 22, 223, whatever you want. 17.
Don't run spraying poison for them.
The bait poison that we sell through Fresno County specifically says ground squirrels. Tree squirrels are not addressed on our label. So unfortunately, if you have tree squirrels, you're going to have to find either a product that is labeled for tree squirrels or find some other kind of method. But as far as our stuff is concerned,
I think Fish and Game has them classified as a fur-bearing mammal. So that because of their classification, I don't think there is a registered poison out there. So trapping and shooting, I think, are your only
main sources. Do you guys get tree squirrel problems?
Yeah,
In almonds? Okay. Are they close to residential areas or cities? Okay. I never thought of tree squirrels usually out past,
they're hard to find,
yeah.
but they come out and just eat the hose up like crazy.
Do they really?
Oh, it's bad.
And they're not ground squirrels. Because ground squirrels will do that too. But I'm no expert.
Yeah, they don't have big red tails.
The big red tails.
That's
okay.
pretty distinct.
Okay. I unfortunately, they're due to, like Dave said, their classification, they're kind of stuck in a spot where I don't know if there's anything poison-wise that you can do. So, I gotta find. Do you have big populations of them, or just when you do have them, they're nasty?
I bet there's not two or three, but man,
When they do show up, they're,
you can't find them and then,
okay. Just like badgers. I don't think you can't do anything about badgers. And if anybody's ever seen a badger hole in the middle of an almond orchard, it's something impressive. Okay. Keep on going? Okay. All right. So that pretty much covers what I have on the road bait. Anybody have anything else to talk about the road bait? We're okay for now? Okay. If you have any questions, we'll be here after for a minute if you want to ask me on anything. Now I'm going to run into another fun topic.